mysteries abound around the world, from strange lights in the night sky to ghostly apparitions passing from one realm to the next. From the Great Pyramids of Egypt to what lies beneath the depths of Loch Ness. From Bigfoot to Atlantis, they are all mysteries waiting to be solved. Join Laurie Phillips, Lauren Smith, Graz, and Billy Simmons as they search for the truth on Nite Callers Radio.
Welcome, everyone, to Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio. It's March 31st, 2016, Thursday night, and it's hot as heck here. But we're all here tonight, every single one of us. And I hope everyone out there had a wonderful Easter. How about you guys? Did you have a wonderful Easter?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Good. Doggone, I forgot what I was going to discuss. Well, that's a great way to start the show, isn't it? I should have made a note.
Hey, we take a week off, and Lori just loses it. That's all right.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember what it was I was going to say. In approximately 2 weeks, I will no longer be Laurie Phillips. I will be Laurie Hood. So we're going to have to change the intro. That's another thing on my to-do list.
Well, I don't mind that because, it still kind of bothers me a little bit of hearing Graz and Billy Simmons. It sounds like we're married or something.
Hey, I tried to tell you. Well, the shoe fits.
Oh, no, that's wrong.
We'll deal with it later.
Hip, maybe, but he's what, 6? You're what, 6'4"? That'd be a bit of a hip to raise to, but that's all right.
Yeah. Well, Graz, you live in one of them there states, you know.
I'm not
we'll deal with the little Okie girl after the show.
Hey, now.
Listen here.
Well, I got to see my grandbaby, and that was awesome. I got to see both my grandbabies. And so, especially the new one. So I was really happy about that. That made my year. So I apologize to all our listeners out there for not having a show, but we were traveling and doing family things. And that's one thing about this show. We do put our family first. And so we will be here next Thursday. Boy, there is a lot of background noise on the show tonight. Yeah. But, hey, does anybody have any news to share?
Apparently not.
Okay. I did someone sent me a video of a supposed chupacabra they got in a cage. Has anybody seen that video?
No. That is a sloth. You can see these huge hooked claws on the front end. That thing is a hairless sloth, and everyone's chupacabra this, chupacabra that. It's just ridiculous. They got it caged up. They sell those things. That's meat down there.
Yeah, I would. I've also seen them caged hairless raccoons and say it's a chupacabra.
Right. They don't know what the hell a chupacabra. That's nothing to do with chupacabra.
Well,
is that thing.
I mean, like even the legend, it says that they have huge fangs that they drain the animals with. Well, none of the animals they trap and put online have fangs at all. So, I don't know.
And that other one is just a hairless dog. They got them all over Mexico. I mean, every once in a while, some of them come across the border, because we don't have a fence, They come across the border, and, people catch them. There's a woman in Texas that actually shot one and kept some of the meat and stuff, and that was called a chupacabra. No, it's just a Mexican dog. That's all it is.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Chris, for solving that mystery. I will now go and delete it off my Facebook page so I don't look like an imbecile.
seen several people posting it in the last couple of days. It's just, it comes and goes.
Yeah, that one and the raccoon and every new supposed Bigfoot sighting. Everyone in my life is like, "Oh, Lauren, have you seen this? Oh, please don't post that on my page. Come on."
Yeah, that's only when we heard that 5 years ago. Oh, you do be.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't want to see blob squatches all over my page just because I do this show and believe, Oh gosh.
Go to my YouTube and find out how to get rid of blob squatches. All right, there you go. That's all.
Well, give me that link, Graz, and I'll put it in the chat just in case.
Blob squatch eliminator.
Anyway, so Mom, you haven't had any more action?
No, nothing. I just had that one possible maybe sighting. I don't really count it because unless I'm really looking at it dead on and I'm absolutely positive, that's the one I count. I probably shouldn't even have brought it up, but it was pretty cool. I really was hoping that it's the same individual that I've seen before and that he's still around. So, but no, nothing. It's rather quiet. So, nothing new to tell in my department.
Well, I thought I would ask.
Okay. How about it, Grant? Why don't you read that introduction so we can go ahead and bring Mr. Ron Morehead on?
Hold on a second. I was just looking for that YouTube of mine. I was going to give it to Lauren, let's say anyway. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio presents Ron Morehead. Nite Callers Radio is proud to present Ron Morehead, who is a resident of Washington. In the early 1970s, Ron was part of a group of hunters who annually packed into a remote area of the Sierra Nevada mountains. During these trips, the team began getting evening visitations from a family of creatures that left huge 5-toed prints. They began to interact with the hunters, and they were able to record the vocalizations. These recordings have been professionally studied and documented as having a complex language. We now have the finest set of audio files ever generated from these creatures. And one of Ron's books is Voices in the Wilderness. All right, thank you very much.
We're finally going to get to hear the life story of Ron Morehead. He'll share it with us tonight. How are you doing, Ron?
Well, I'm doing just fine. I appreciate the announcement there. I'm with you. I'm happy that you asked me. Thank you.
And I'm happy that you came on. I've been excited all week. This is a privilege to get to talk to you. My biggest thing, Ron, has always been recording. And I guess you would call me audio researcher. So you've always been kind of like my idol, I guess, because you've got the best recordings ever. So anyway, it is great to have you on the show. And first of all, we'd like to ask you if you could tell us how it all began for you.
It began, when a couple of the brothers who've been hunting up there since the 50s, late 50s, hunting camp, about 8 miles into the wilderness, very imposing area, and quite a trek to get there from the closest place you can drive to. And when they thought a bear was tearing up the camp, the sounds they heard wasn't obviously a bear. They're avid hunters, and this was in 1971 when it began. And when they finally went outside after the sounds had quit, they seen these big, huge 5-toed footprints in the mud around the stove that we packed on the mules before. Anyway, that's how it started with the Johnson brothers, and then they came out and. Because it was kind of frightening. The first sounds, and we'll play some later, but the first sounds were very aggressive sounding, very intimidating, and these guys had guns, and they didn't shoot at these creatures, and creatures didn't tear in the shelter at them, which we have a makeshift shelter up there. And anyway, they came out and told the rest of us, and we all started going up there after that, and we started taking tape recorders with us in case they came back. When they started coming back, and we started leaving food for them. They would take it. They would make these sounds, and was very fortunate to get the recordings that we got. It wasn't until 1970, or the winter of 71 into 72, when Warren Johnson wrote to Ivan Sanderson. And Ivan Sanderson, if you know who he is, a cryptozoologist, and gave him a 23-page handwritten letter about what was going on. And of course, he thought it was probably just a big who-to-do story, hoax, in other words.
Yeah.
He forwarded it to a man named Peter Byrne, who was in Oregon at the time. And you may have heard his name, too. He's a long-time researcher that was at the Patterson site. And Peter thought it was a hoax, too. It's just too incredible. These things don't usually interact with people. And Peter Byrne sent it to Alan Berry, who was an investigative reporter working at the Redding Record Searchlight newspaper in Redding, California. Asked him if he'd like to go investigate it. Well, Al thought, might just go ahead and do it just to see if there's anything to it at all. So he came down and interviewed us all down in San Joaquin Valley, which is actually in Merced, where we were. It's close, just above Fresno in California, and it's in the valley. And anyway, he thought it was an intriguing story, and he heard some of the sounds that we'd recorded, and he asked if he could go in, and he went in 1972 and took a little cassette recorder, like that's all we had in those days was cassettes. And his second trip, maybe his first, I'm not sure which trip it was, but he got some real incredible sounding Bigfoot vocalizations when he remoted his mic up about 40 feet from the shelter. And those he ended up having studied at the University of Wyoming by a Professor Curlin. And he determined that the sounds were legitimate, that they hadn't been pre-recorded, re-recorded, altered speed, which that was the feedback that I was getting from anybody just listened to me. Oh, somebody just played some human voices backwards and speeded them up or something like that. But he determined that that wasn't what happened. He did a year-long study, and it wasn't a complete study, but it was enough to tell us we've got some professional backing now that says, of course, I wasn't in it for the proving of it. None of us were. We were up there as hunters, which I don't hunt any longer, but I was up there really trying to uncover a hoax during the time. And he was going through our packs when we didn't know it. He was just really trying to find out what the source of these sounds were. And but he ended up going to Centronics. That was back in New York City, the people that investigated the Watergate tapes. If you remember that or not, the Nixon tapes. You got to remember that.
I remember that.
But they couldn't do a full-blown study because of the cost. Al couldn't afford that. He was trying. They suggested getting a university, somebody, electrical engineer, to study the tapes, and that's when he got a hold of Dr. Curlin, and he took him on. And after that, we just kept on trying. He kept on trying to get more, because that was just to show that the tapes were genuine. And that was a big hit. That was a good thing, but it wasn't enough. People still couldn't believe these things talked. We knew they were conversing between themselves and a rapid stuff going on between them. But we're nobody if you got to put a title behind their name. We're all businessmen, but we're not professors in linguistics. We're not professors. If you don't have somebody professional saying this is what it is, no one's going to buy it. Al knew this. We didn't. We didn't think about that. We didn't realize how unique it was. But Al did realize how unique this was, and he kept searching for more people to do more. And it wasn't until 2008 when a cryptolinguist named Scott Nelson got a hold of me through a BFRO site, actually, and heard the samurai sound, which we'll hear later. And he chased me down and said, if this is real, I got to talk to you guys. So he came all the way out from Missouri, where he teaches foreign languages now, and he interviewed Al and I to find the context of the sounds, and heard all the sounds, or at least hours of them. And anyway, he went back and studied them, and he says these things have a language by the human definition of language, and that's how it kind of goes. Scott sometimes talks with me in conventions, and he's got quite a program talking to how he determined it was language. And I have to tell people, because people are after me all the time, how, they hear a yell or a scream or wood knocks even and say, this is a Bigfoot, I know it's a Bigfoot. Well, no, you don't know it's a Bigfoot unless you saw it make the noise. And we did see these things make noise in 1974. I did. That's when I was interacting with them. Just interrupt me anytime you want to if you've got questions or something.
Yes, I do have
Okay, go ahead.
I actually do have a question. When you saw them, did they look anything like the Patterson-Gimlin film, the Patties?
Well, first of all, I only saw them one time. I got to tell you, these things are elusive. They're stealthy, and if they know you're looking for them, because they are sapient people, they're sapient creatures. I refer to them as a people because they have a language, they're cognizant, and they figure things out. And we underestimate them tremendously when we were trying to get information off of them back in the 70s when they were interacting with us real close up. And even though you see glimpses, they wouldn't come out and just show themselves to you and say, here, shake my hand, give me a piece of peanut butter or something. They didn't do that. All you get is a glimpse or a shadow or something like that. My daughter, Rhonda, started going up there with me, and she saw them 3 times. And the time I saw them in 74 was because they only would come around at night or in evening time. And it was just moving so fast, I couldn't give you a definite. Did it have a sagittal crest or not? I couldn't tell you that because it was going so fast. But it was when I was interacting with it, and one of the sound bites that I sent you that we play tonight has that interaction sequence, one of them. And that's the night that me and my buddy, who we packed in on horses, had these things coming around just right after dusk. It was a bright moonlit night, and that's when we both got to get glimpses of them for the first time. Because any other time they would only interact with us, or I should say interact, they would only come around when we were inside the shelter. They would come around and take our food, and you couldn't get outside the shelter fast enough to catch a glimpse of one generally. But over the years, we have all just about, except Al didn't. Al never got to see one. But Al wasn't up there as often as all of us were. He was working for a living, so were we, but we were fortunate enough to be our own business people, and we could take off when we could arrange it. He couldn't just do that at a whim. So anyway, he never got to see one, and I can only say I saw one once. All of us got glimpses about Larry Johnson, one of Warren's son, he saw one pretty close. He said it was close to 10 foot tall, between 8 and 10 foot tall, and it was broad-chested. He's probably 20 feet away from it. He was looking through a hole in the shelter, the log shelter wall that we'd rigged up, and he said that it had a big barrel chest, very broad shoulders, and it looked like a huge football player with football pads on. He seen a silhouette, and didn't look like it had a neck, and as soon as he whispered to his uncle, Lewis, he turned back, and that thing was looking straight at him, but it was dark still, or kind of dark. And it just took 2 steps and went away. That thing left a 19-inch track, so you've got some kind of a idea of what size track goes with what size individual.
On these recordings, were they actually interacting with you and the people, or the people that were there, or were they talking to each other on these recordings?
Both. You could hear them chattering, usually from a distance, and if you went inside the shelter, they would start coming in closer. And if you left food out, they would take the food. And basically, even though you'd go outside, because we got comfortable with them after a while, and realizing they weren't going to attack us, they weren't going to come in and crash through the shelter. They realized, I think, or we weren't going to shoot at them. So I think there was a mutual thing going on there with trust. And so we got kind of comfortable. We started going outside, trying to coach them in, and that's when basically some of the interactions
when you
started.
coached them in, I hear myself again. When you coached them in, were you using your own language, or were you trying to talk like them? Okay.
Well, at first first of all, the only person that would do that, we elected just Warren Johnson. He was a senior in the group. He's passed away now, but he was the one that would talk to him. He thought one voice would be all they needed to deal with. And when we say coach them in, we were trying to coach them out in the open so we could get a picture or something. And even though you knew they were behind one of those big trees, you go back in and they start chattering again, and they're beating on their chest or something. And it was just quite an adventurous time, the early 70s, when we were really trying to get something just for. It was a lot of fun, I got to tell you. It was scary at first, but then it got exciting, and then it just got to be fun. Anticipating if they was going to come around when we went up there, because they weren't there all the time, but a lot of times they were. 71 all the way through 74 into 76, and so we were getting comfortable with them. Don't know what they were trying to say to me in 74, but you'll hear about it when we get to some of the sounds later on.
Okay.
They were, I think, definitely trying to ask me a question or ask me something or say something to me. I would respond back mimicking them this time, which normally we just talk in our own voice, but I mimicked the one that was yelling out at me, and just got a real interesting response. And I produced all this in my story on a CD that I sell on my website, BigfootSounds.com. And I produced Al Berry's story, which has the more aggressive sounds that he recorded in 72 on a CD. And just recently, last couple of years ago, I wrote a book about this situation at Al Berry's encouragement. He said, "You need to write your story." And so I did.
Oh.
If I may?
Yeah.
Yes.
I may have missed it. But when you first went out there, you said you were hunting. Did you, previous to that night, know anything about Bigfoot or heard anything about it, or were you anticipating anything to happen, or you were just out hunting?
Just hunting.
Were you skeptic?
The group wasn't looking for Bigfoot. They didn't. The only knowledge we had of Bigfoot was the Patterson-Gimlin encounter in 1967, a few years earlier. And that's about it. I knew about it, but I wasn't expecting anything like that. None of us were expecting that. And in retrospect, we kind of think they were observing the camp and the hunters prior to them ever letting their presence be known.
How long were you up there?
When? I mean, we were up there for years. Each time. We usually go up there for about 4 or 5 days during hunting season, and then go up there at different times during the summer, especially when this started happening in 72. We spent a lot of time up there. We'd go up there every chance I got. And, anyway, it was a lot of activity during those years. And
right. They got to know you, and you're thinking they built a certain amount of trust from you. Yeah, and I think they wanted us to learn something from them. We were there thinking we want to learn more about them, but I think that's kind of flip-flopped. They were trying to get us to learn more about them to learn. I think we created curiosity. We hang our deer up behind our shelter. They would actually come in at night, and we found evidence where they moved the deer. In fact, big tracks right underneath the deer, and the deer was in another spot on the cable behind our shelter. And yet they never would take anything that they didn't feel like we left out for them. At least that's how we thought it. Because if we left it on the stove, and basically it was whatever we had for dinner, and left it out, that's when they were probably observing us eating, and they came in and got it, and right after we go inside.
Do you suppose they had never seen people before?
Oh, no, I don't think that at all. I think they probably observed people in campgrounds, and there's a lot of sightings in the Sierras, and a lot of encounters have been reported, but nothing like we had. And I didn't realize how unique what we had was. Al Berry did, and that's why he spent so much energy trying to establish the credibility behind these sounds. So, anyway, that's kind of how it started. And it's been going on today. Last time I was up there was in 2011, I think it was, or 2012 maybe. And every time I've tried to go up there since, something's happened to keep me from it. And I mean, one time when I just got to the base of the hill where I was going to start off, and something heavy fell out of my truck and broke my toe, and I couldn't walk because we was walking in. And another time I went up there packing I was trying to get one of my horses trail ready, because it's quite a trail, and you can get hurt on that trail, especially with a horse that's not trail-wise. And I was going to pony him up there. In fact, I was ponying him up there, but I was packing him at the same time. And he got on the edge of this area and just went over and lost all our supplies, and that kind of kept us from going up then. But just one thing after another year, there was a forest fire that blocked the highway off going up into that area, so we couldn't even, it's probably going to be smoky anyway. It didn't burn the area, but it was burning the highway that went to the area. So they were still there in 2011. That was one of the last things I wrote about in my book. It was about my last encounter. And it was a little spooky as I went up by myself.
Oh, my.
Kind of a no-no.
Do you think it was the same individuals that have always been there?
You know, I think it's the same family group. I can't say it's the same ones, but it's the same family group. We know there was a little one up there in the 70s, because we got his voice recorded with a mother, a little voice, and then a mother coming back. And that's actually my book. I write about that, and that sound. In the book, it comes with a CD, Voices in the Wilderness, but as you read the story and get to the context around a certain sound, you can play the CD and hear the sound. So that's on one of the sounds that I got on the CD.
Okay, now, before we forget to ask you, how do you go about getting that book?
Well, you can either order
on
any
Amazon
of this. Amazon has the book. I haven't put my CDs on there, but the book is on there. And it comes, like I say, with a CD, but not one of the narrative CDs like I have independently on my website, which is bigfootsounds.com or ronmorehead.com. Either one of those will get you to the site, and I have my articles I've written there. And all these also are downloadable, so people don't have to order the paperback. If they don't want it, they can just download the book. Or the CDs are downloadable.
Okay.
So, or they can get the hard one if they just order it from me. So that's how it happens.
I got a quick question.
Yes.
When you were saying that, what's his name, Al?
Al Berry.
Right. Okay. I heard something several years ago about the CR sounds being studied by the Navy.
That probably would have been.
That's
Scott
probably
Nelson,
Scott Nelson. He's retired Navy cryptolinguist. He retired from the Navy as a cryptolinguist. So he used the same techniques as they use in the Navy to determine language. He can't tell me what they were saying, but he can tell me that it's definitely language. And that's something I didn't mention a minute ago, but this is what I talk about in my talks when I'm in conference or something. What creates a language, or what makes a language by the human definition of language, is what they call a morpheme stream. And that's phonemes, which is a single word in a group of 10 or 12 words at least that make up a sentence. And if you've got that going on, it's considered a language by the human definition of language. So when people send me sounds of a hoot or a growl or a yell or something like it doesn't give us anything. It could have been a Bigfoot, but it doesn't mean that's what it is unless you saw it make that noise. And it's not going to prove anything because people don't want to believe you. They just don't.
No.
And I've been going through this for over 40 years, and they believe me because I've got the credibility behind it with cryptolinguists who is vetted thoroughly. I mean, there's nobody could have done what this guy did better than he did. And that's transcribed the actual language, not the words, what they were saying, but he's got the alphabet basically figured out from their phonics, something like that. Anyway, I'm putting that in my new book, which I'm going to have out this fall, called The Quantum Bigfoot, and we'll talk about that later if you want to. But it gets into what makes a language, because so many people want to know. Well, I know this was a Bigfoot. I've never heard anything like this before. Well, okay, and people want to tell me their story about some Bigfoot that passed behind them 20 years ago or something, and okay, that's all interesting, but it doesn't progress anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just a story, and until you've got something professional going behind it, the story doesn't mean a lot. It's just a story. There's a lot of books out there with just stories in them, and they're interesting, but that's all you can say.
Well, Ron, I'm wondering why no one else has recorded sounds like this.
Well, some people say they have, and I just got some from a guy today, actually, who, as far as I know, but they haven't got the clarity that you can really find a morphine string. He's got these little, here's where it says whoop, and they got a whoop whoop there, and sure enough, they do. You can barely hear it, though. And I've had people tell me, we heard the sounds just like what you've recorded, but they don't have a tape recorder. They're just out in the woods doing whatever they're doing. Most people don't walk around the woods with tape recorders. Researchers do, but these things are pretty hard to get a finger on. It's like nailing Jell-O to the wall. And we were just, I guess, lucky, or there's something going on deeper.
Very
to why this happened.
Yes, well, I think it was several things, to be truthful. I think it was the fact that it was so very remote. You and your friend had developed a trust, and it could be just the area. It could be a tribe or a family of them that have their own personal language that's different than others out there in the rest of the world. I mean,
well, I believe you're hitting on something very much like what I theorize, that there's different types of these things. They're not just one. Some of them can talk, some of them can't, maybe. I think there's a lot going on that we don't know about as far as DNA manipulation with some type of primates. And I think possibly these things are a remnant from something like that. And as I mentioned to you before the program, I've been to Peru a couple of times, and I've seen alien remains, which is just basically non-human. And
elongated skull and things
well,
like that. Well,
naturally, yeah, but they were naturally elongated. They weren't cradle-boarded like the Incas did. And in the back of the skull, the two little pinholes. You don't know what that's all about. It wasn't cranial deformation. They would sometimes knock a hole in your head to get rid of a headache, I guess, back in those days.
No, those are nerve outlets. I've looked at those too.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think that's what the scientist said that I was with on both occasions. And the elongation was naturally elongated, and no sagittal suture in the middle, which we have two, parietals. There's just one single parietal. It's all elongated. And this is common in Peru, very common. And we think the Incas probably were mimicking those. And I might say, too, those skulls had 25 to 30% more brain matter. However, when the Incas mimicked that by cradle boarding their royalty, youth, they were trying to get the same, we think, attributes that possibly that culture had, which we think is responsible for the megalithic structures down there, which are very unique. You can't even...
you can change the shape, but you can't change the brain. But there's also a couple of other things.
That's exactly
there's
right.
also a couple of other things that are different about the skulls. Those skulls is I've got a picture saved on my computer here someplace where Brian set up 4 skulls, one human in the center, and 4 of the elongated ones on either side. And you can see a huge difference between the eye sockets, the jaw size. The eye sockets on these other skulls are just huge compared to a human's, and they're more square. The same with the jaw. The jaw is a little bit more square, and it's got more of a pronounced chin. So there's the morphology of those skulls is totally different.
Absolutely. The big giveaway, and that, is there's so many of them, but there's also is the what was I going to say? I forgot where my train of thought was going there, but they're just.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that happens to.
I got a good memory, just sometimes it's not very long. Forget where I put it. But it was quite adventurous down there to see all the stuff that this culture, call them Paracas people. By the way, speaking of that, you talked about the hairless dogs earlier. They'll get like a half-inch of rain in Paracas, Peru. That's about 4 hours south of Lima. And that's where a lot of these skulls are, in private museums or wherever down there. And grave diggers are all over in that area. I mean, you see a whole amount. They're looking for artifacts that they can sell. And it's so common down there. This stuff is just everywhere. And anyway, if they find an unusual skull like this, they take it into some museum, see who'll give them the money for it. Otherwise, they're just looking for jewelry and whatever is buried with the individual. But those skulls mostly were from royalty, and they're in cemeteries now, which are up now are being guarded. You can't even get there to take pictures hardly. We got stopped by an agent who said you can't take the pictures, and we was way off in a distance trying to take pictures of this cemetery. But I don't know what got me off on that, other than it's quite the area to visit. And you get in the high country of Peru, which you may have been there, in the Cusco and up out of Cusco to Ollanta and Pandu, which is where you catch the train to go to Machu Picchu. And there's some enigmatic structures there which defy how they got them up on top of this mountain. And just out of Cusco, there's a place that's got these boulders, some of them over 100 ton, a lot of them over 100 ton.
Yeah,
they are fit together like a puzzle. You can't even there's no mortar, and you can't get a hair between them. And they're cut like a puzzle. And they were quarried 20 to 40 miles away, some of them. And how they got them up on this mountain, 13,000 feet in elevation, and placed them like that. And it wasn't like one or two. This thing goes on and on and on. This stuff is all over Peru. And you see that, and you realize, and UFOs are commonplace down there. It's just not like there's something unusual. And so aliens have been here. I've concluded that in my brain. I always kind of figured, well, yeah, probably. But when you see what's going on down there, you kind of just say, yeah, that's I'm looking at it. I'm holding this skull right here, and but anyway, I guess where I was going that while ago that I forgot was the single parietal. That's really unique. That's the giveaway. There's only one parietal plate on top of the head. They don't have two parietals like humans do. And that is what I was thinking about.
Okay, and I was going to ask you, I know there's several places that have got the hieroglyphics on the ground that you can only see from the sky. Is it Peru?
That's in Nazca. That's in Nazca, Peru, yeah, down south. I flew over that, and it's interesting, yeah. Makes a lot of sense
why
from the air.
Would they do something that you couldn't see from the ground, but only see from the air? I've always thought that was had to be extraterrestrial landmark of some kind.
Well, there's a lot of that down there in Nazca. It's called the Nazca Lines. But you get on the ground and just crawl up on a little hill or something, it still doesn't make any sense to you, which I did that. And but when you fly over an airplane, which we did that too, you see the figures. And
all the figures are astrological.
Yeah, I don't know what they represent, but
right. The astrological symbols are a little bit different than the 12 signs that we know of. There's a couple of them that are the same, but they've got spider and a monkey and things like that. They have their own version of the astrological system, but it's working on the same calendar. And somebody, they or somebody else, put them into the ground, and they're pointing off in the distance towards those symbols. It's the same with the Sphinx and several other temples over in Egypt. You've heard of Graham Hancock and Robert Duvall. Ron?
Have I heard of them? Or do I know who they are? I don't, I'll be honest with you. I may have, but again, my memory isn't as good as it used to be.
That's okay. That's part of the stuff I study on the side, too. Bigfoot is all part of it because a living ancient humanoid type of person, whatever it is that people want to call it. It's all connected to these ancient civilizations. We've gone through several cycles on this planet. So it's all connected. All these studies are all connected in certain fashions. And it's interesting that you've gone from the cryptid down to Peru to get an idea about certain angles toward that.
I went Peru thinking, I want to see if anything down there could connect with what's going on up here. And of course, a lot of people report a sagittal crest on these Bigfoot creatures. And I wanted to find out if the elongation had anything to do with anything to do with the Lovelock Cave giants, which I've been over Lovelock Cave 4 times now, and into Winnemucca Museum trying to get an eyeball on these things. But you know about the Lovelock Caves in Nevada, as far as the Paiutes warring with the cannibalistic giants.
Right.
That's the story, and that story was actually brought out in 1911 when the guano miners went in there, and under about 4 to 5 feet of guano, they started uncovering these remains and giants. And the museum will deny that, BLM will deny that, but we got pictures from way back before they got a hold of it all. And all those skulls have been taken away. You can't view them anymore, except unless you got access to some of the pictures like I do. And it definitely huge giants. And the Paiutes say they were cannibalistic. So I wanted to find out if anything in Peru led to what's going on up here. Then I find out there's stories in Peru about warring with the Mayans and the Aztec in the Central America. Then you find their stories, which leads you right up to they warred with giants in the north. And that takes us right into North America, where we are here. And you got the
cannibalistic giants. How large are we talking about?
8 foot or so. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're not talking 20 foot.
No, we're not.
Okay.
No, we're not talking that size. At least the skulls I saw pictures of weren't representative of something that would have been that big. Mm-hmm. But I do think something like that has been here. You got all the way back into biblical accounts of the Nephilim, which you may know about in Genesis, where aliens bred with the human women, creating the Nephilim. And then you got the Greek and Hebrew mythology, which talks about the demigods, which were half human, half gods. These things had special attributes. Yeah, all of them. Yeah, Sumerians are really a thing to say. Then it's just there's a lot of history. You ever hear about the minaret skull in the Sierras? That was found by Dr. Denton over in Bishop, and his pack mule he was in with a bunch of Boy Scouts. His mule kicked up this big skull, and it was a big human-like skull, but it was huge. And he sent it to UCLA for a study, and strangely enough, UCLA has lost it. How does that happen? We went in there on horseback all the way into the area because Dr. Denton was interviewed. Al Berry interviewed him. And we went in looking to see if we could find a little meadow where the mule kicked up that, see if we could find any more artifacts or anything there. And we spent about 3 days in there. A nice trip, but we didn't find anything. But that doesn't mean, there's a lot of digging to do if you're going to find something like that after so many years, But it was fun, and ate a lot of trout. But, and then you've got the Martindale mummies. Have you ever heard about the Martindale mummies? Mummy was found in Yosemite. It used to be called a bridal veil mummy because it was found miners found that in 1898, I think it was. And it was a 7-foot tall female mummy holding a baby, mummified. And that, I chased it all the way into Ripley's, believe it or not, where they acquired it in 1998, I think it was. And that's where I lost trail of it. I couldn't find it after that. So, but that's pictures of that, and that's in my book, Voices in the Wilderness. So there's a lot of history of giants in the Sierras and around the Sierras. And I just wanted to see if any of that might have been brought up from these enigmatic aliens, I guess you want to call them, that was in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like there could be a connection, according to the stories that is handed down.
I've heard stories of people saying they saw a Bigfoot coming out of UFOs.
I've heard a lot of that too. Yeah.
Baby Bigfoot coming out of, falling down these beams of light from the UFO and bouncing along the ground and running off, and just some incredible stories.
Yeah.
And if they say they saw it, I guess. And then Billy, he had Bigfoot in the area and also had a UFO at the same time. So I don't know. We really don't know.
It's really fun speculating about all that stuff. It used to be when I was interviewing people, and I've been doing this for a long time now. I would just kind of write them off when they said they saw a UFO or they saw one of these creatures disappear. But after my trips to Peru and after all these people I've interviewed and talked to about the enigmatic features that seem to go on around these things, including what's happened to us up there, things I didn't used to talk about, but I kind of do now. Just strange things you didn't have an answer for. There's no classical science behind it. It's just something else. But you get into quantum physics, and you understand that there's more going on than what our three-dimensional eyes can see. There's other things going on. That there's 11 dimensions, and according to science anyway, and I think religion calls those dimensions heaven. So I kind of delve into that in my new book, and I don't delve into it, I get into it. It's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun researching and doing this stuff. But there has to be a scientific answer behind all these mysteries going on. And I think the answer might lie in quantum physics and the rules of quantum physics. You see, light, well, I don't know how much you want me to talk about that, but I can philosophize all night long.
Approximately, what would you say we have? Are we at break time? Or do we still have some time?
No, we still got about another 8 or 9 minutes left before we can take a break. And we need to take a break or anything, so we're not too worried about that. Now, once you start getting into the quantum and stuff, how are we going to be able to get into any kind of testing of that kind of situation? Because it's, unfortunately, so far, with a lot of the people that are dealing with this, it's all subjective material. Well, it's pretty much like a lot of Bigfoot sightings and whatnot. It's all subjective. We have to find some way to get some kind of proof.
Well, you won't in quantum. You won't prove anything, but you can at least open people's minds up to the possibilities that may be what's happening. You're not going crazy. This thing really did disappear. How did it do that? Because maybe it has an attribute. If it does have alien origin, maybe it has an attribute that allows him to transfer into another dimension. You see, we only see in the light and the frequency of light. Of course, if you want to listen to some of these physicists talk, we don't really exist until we're observed. Mass doesn't exist. We're just energy. And that energy can only be distinguishable by our three-dimensional eyes while we're in the light frequency of 186,300 miles a second. While you're in that, you can be visible. Mass, after that, doesn't exist. Mass didn't really exist before that. The energy existed that you could perceive as mass. And after that, that's how spaceships shoot off and all of a sudden they just disappear. Well, they go outside of the light frequency. And I think that's there's a lot going on if you can just understand the rules, which are hard to understand, but get your head around some of this stuff, that nothing is real until it's observed, is what physics, the math and physics says. Well, we're just kind of like a hologram down here. Our frequency has been so lowered, it's being perceived as energy in a mass form. And if you can get your head around that one, we can go on and talk a little bit how Bigfoot can disappear. Because I used to, like I say, I would just write these people off when they say, I saw one disappear. I can take it where it disappeared, and I see it disappear before us. And but I don't write them off anymore. Just too many reports of that. And one person very close to me saw this happen for her eyes, and she just that sold her on the fact that they even exist because she witnessed it. And you got to kind of give some kind of credit. What's going on? Are they hypnotizing? Are they just making you think that they disappear? Are they bending the light? What's really going on in physics or in the rules here that allow something like that? So if I can get that concept across to people in my book, that's all I'm trying to do. I don't know that you can ever prove it. You can just prove what the math and physics says and let people go with it where they want to go.
Then there's all kinds of philosophical ideas about, if they can do that, why do they hunt? And why have hunters from their tree stands seen Bigfoot sneaking up on a pig? There's all kinds of...
Well, sure. I think when they're living in our dimension, they want to eat. It's a privilege, I think, to be here on this earth. And I think we're privileged people. I think they are here, and I don't think they're all the same. I think some of them have been here for a long time. They've probably been diluted down, whatever they are, into more human-like form. And I think that's why you find the mitochondrial DNA in any species that you get a piece of is going to show human, because the mitochondria falls through on the human's female side is going to be human, because that's what the aliens do, and that's how they do it. That's supposedly how they did it in the days of Noah, back in the Old Testament days, and that's how the Nephilim came about. But it's interesting.
They were supposed to have been all destroyed, though, according to the Bible.
Say that once more.
They were supposed to have been destroyed.
They were destroyed. That's why the flood came. And there's a suggestion that one of Noah's son's wives had carried a recessive gene back through. That's how they got through the flood. But no, I say no. Aliens could do it then. Everything has a free will. We do. They do. Everything has a free will. They did it again in the land of Canaan when there was giants in there. In Numbers 13:33, it talks about how they encountered giants. That's why God said you got to go in there and destroy them, all of them, the women, the children, everything has to be destroyed because they're corrupted. And if you think about it, there's been a whole system going on in the cosmic war, I guess you want to call it, of trying to corrupt the human genome. And that's why I think we're very special people. And I think we a lot of times underestimate just how special we are, made in God's image. So we have been given a life to respond to things with, and I think if we follow what Christ taught, and again, I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. There's some nuggets in the Bible which are really ring out true to me, and if you just read the red letter edition, you're going to find out what Christ said, and his rules and what he was doing basically falls right into quantum physics. And the subtitle of my book is a statement by Einstein, which said, science without religion is lame, religion without science is blind. Well, think about that. Classical science nowadays is in a box. They cannot go spiritual. They have to have hard evidence put on the table that they can dissect. But if you think about what Christ said and things he said, it falls right into the way he healed people, the way he did things is quantum physics. And I get into that. And you're right, I can philosophize a lot, but if you can back it with some statements by Einstein, by Bohr, by some of these scientists that are renowned, maybe people will get a hold of it and say, okay, because there's enlightenment coming to this earth. I think we're all fixing to get it.
I think so too.
Isn't that fun?
I truly think that it is that time is coming where people will see the truth like they've never seen it before.
Well, I think what we're going to see is an inundation of aliens. Basically, is going to be it's being more and more commonplace for people to accept them now. It didn't used to be that way 10 years ago or even 20 years ago. But that's the way it was.
Remember Project Blue Book that was all blacked out?
Well, you know, the Bible says, I want to keep getting back into that. It's a good book. It says, as it was in the days of Noah. And Christ said this, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall also be in the second coming. Well, the way it was in the days of Noah, aliens was breeding the ladies, the women of this earth. And the Native American lore is that these things took their women. And I think that's going on now, or has gone on. And that's what we're seeing a lot of in these Bigfoots that we're seeing now. Is they're more human-like. Their facial expressions are human-like. There's a lot of human in them, but they're not like we are. They're not made in the image of the God that we were made in the image of.
Right.
And these things are made in the image of something else, but they are sapient beings. And that should be scary to a lot of people, because some of them are good and some of them are bad. And some of them are here to help, and religions calls that guardian angels. I call it good aliens, I guess. But there's bad ones too. They'll throw rocks, and they're. I think a lot of these. Again, there's different types, but I think even our government is playing around with the DNA of some of these things. I have some information on that I can't share, but. DNA can be manipulated now. And even Hitler was working on a super race of people, you know, trying to get superhuman warriors. And there's more than one story out there that goes with that the government's doing now and has for a while.
I think we're going to go ahead and go to intermission. Ron, I'm going to have you log out and come back in, so maybe we won't have the echoing. And if you don't mind trying that during intermission to come back on.
Okay.
Because it's driving me crazy hearing my own voice.
When do you want me to? How much time do you want me to wait?
You can go ahead and do it now, and Grass is going to go ahead and take us to intermission, and everyone, when we come back, we'll be playing some sounds, and Ron is going to tell us about what these sounds are about. So y'all stay tuned, and we'll be back after intermission. Ron, if you'll do that, hopefully it will work this time.
I'm ending my call right now.
Okay.
We're back in about 8.5 minutes. Oh, man. I feel like it just spent a week in Sedona, dude. Dude. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Ron, you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I don't think I'm echoing. I don't think so.
Well, you just echoed what I said, but that's okay. We'll ignore that. Ron?
Yes.
We were talking a little while ago about this, that, and the other thing. I was wondering if you've ever studied the Sitchin material.
A little bit, yeah. I understand his philosophy. I have his books, but truthfully, I haven't read it all. He talks about just what I think I was alluding to as far as aliens, and they created the human race so to be their slaves, I think, or something like that.
Yeah,
but I don't believe that.
He did an interpretation of the Sumerian tablets. There's some other specialists that are saying that his translations of the tablets are a little bit incorrect, to be nice about it, as far as the alien material is concerned. But some have actually said, some of the Bigfoot researchers have actually thought that Bigfoot was DNA created by these alleged Nephilim or the Anunnaki as slaves or something for gold mining. And after the floods or something like that. Some of them is either escaped or they were let loose. Some have said these things. And have you heard anything like that?
Well, except depends on how much of the Bible you want to believe, or just think it was confabulated from point to point. But according to the Bible, only Noah and his family escaped alive, and the animals. But like we saw about just before the break, aliens can do this, and they did it again after the flood. And that's why the land of Canaan was that's where, well, the giant that we know about, Goliath, and his three brothers were up there. And but God ordered them to be all destroyed, and that's what happened. Did some of them escape from that? Yeah, that's possible. We can philosophize and theorize till we're blue in the face here. You can get right into Rebecca's womb if you want to go that far back, where her two sons, one was hairy and one was not. The hairy one came out first, Esau, and you got Jacob, who wasn't, and he lost his birthright. And the wars that we're having over there today are directly related to that, I think. You get right into Esau. If you get into Michelangelo's painting, if you look at the bottom of it, you'll see the Edomites was what was begat by Esau. And the Edomites, there's two of them in a cave, hairy, at the bottom of Michelangelo's painting, one of them. And anyway, there's a lot to be said about maybe that's where Bigfoot or the giants came from. And they're a remnant of something like that. But again, I don't know. I don't think they're all the same. I mean, the tracks I've seen different people cast, the tracks we had up there, even though they're huge, they're not the same. They're not, according to Meldrum now, there only can be one. According to the cryptolinguist, well, if one has language, the whole species would have language. But I think they could be different types created by different type of aliens. I mean, it's a little out there, woo-woo land, but basically aliens have been here. I think they come here. They can come here anytime they want to. And again, I've interviewed people that say they've seen spaceships and these creatures along side by side. And we've seen lights at our camp up there. We've had different things happening. One time we thought the whole camp was being torn apart out there. All our barrels that we'd hauled in on mules, everything being strung out everywhere. And we all look out and nothing's moved, nothing's changed. Well, how do they do that? They either mass hypnotize or mass control your head some way, or you're hearing into another dimension that you can't see, that you're not seeing. You know, it's all speculation, but there's mysteries that just surround these creatures, and they're not some ape running around the woods, and I think that's where so many people underestimate them. That's what we thought they were originally, was something like that. I mean, we didn't have answers for some of these things that went on, but so we just don't know.
Well, there's several versions of Noah's story scattered around the world in various cultures, and I think that it's possible that survivors, I mean, the Bible was written pretty much regionally, and I think that survivors in other places wrote their versions of it also along the same lines, and that Bigfoot or versions of these hominids survived also in various places. I don't think it was a worldwide total destruction of every single person on this planet except for what survived in Noah's Ark, practically speaking. It's very possible that all these other versions of humans and other hominid types are survivors also, and then there's just different types around the world.
There's people that believe just like you do, in the Bigfoot realm especially, who think that somehow the giants, some of them survived the flood. Of course, our Bible, the canonized version of the Old Testament and the Aramaic version, says that everything was destroyed. In the 7th chapter, I think it was, all living things that walk the face of the earth was destroyed. So my theory is, which differs, is that if aliens did it once, they did it again. They're still trying to copy the human genome, and that's where comes right back in, all the way back to Abraham's, heirs, Esau and Jacob, from Isaac.
Well, in the if I may, in the Sumerian version, the Epic of Gilgamesh, there is something called Mes, M-E, and these have been translated into various ideas about what it means. But in the Sumerian, the Mes are the keys to the universe, which includes DNA. And one of the theories that some of the people are saying is that the DNA was taken off of the earth before the flood, and that it was re-established after the flood. In various pockets around the world. And like I said, the Bible is not exclusive as far as the stories of the flood. And these other people, various races around the world, survived on their own in various pockets, mountainous regions or whatever, however they survived. And I don't know if you study the ancient history enough, but you see these little purses that these people are holding in these symbols drawn on walls or carved into statues and what. They're holding a little purse, and this is what's called a me in the Sumerian, where everything has been saved and reestablished after the floods. And this could also include Bigfoot or other cryptids. What do you think about that kind of stuff?
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Could be. There's a lot of books, and of course, as we know the history of the Bible, if you can't, and there's religious people that say, well, if you take one word out of that, you're going to go to hell and all that stuff. Well, bull. I think his religion, it was written by the king that was in charge and wanted to control quite a bit. A lot of stories were handed down for centuries until they were finally written down. And so, there's mistakes in the Bible, absolute mistakes, and you can find them. One of them is...
those are mistakes of translation, not necessarily content. And sometimes content, but it's hard to tell.
Well, like the party in the Red Sea, well, that was the Sea of Reeds, and that's easy to find. The Sea of Reeds is dried up now, probably because of the Suez Canal that was put in, and but that's where the... Well,
you've been watching The Naked Archaeologist, haven't you?
No, I have, but I've heard of this. This is from years and years ago, though. No, this didn't come from that, though. I thought, well, wait, these people are on it too, But there was a guy named Robert.
A wonderful documentary about that.
Yeah, Robert Freyd wrote a book years ago called "Scientific Answers to Biblical Mysteries," and he followed the trail of the Israelites all the way to the Sea of Reeds, and he gets right into it all. And I read that, I don't know, 20 years ago, I guess. I forgot how long it was. But that's when I come across, well, yeah, that's a mistake. But another mistake you can find, I didn't get this from his book, but it's a simple thing. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the heaven.
Yeah, that's in the Bible. I don't know what book it is. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, the word for camel is spelled exactly in the Aramaic version as the word for rope. And rope, in those days, was made out of camel hair. But you get into stuff like that, and it's common to make mistakes. And they make mistakes. And so what makes more sense, for a rope to go through the eye of a needle or for a camel to go through the eye of a needle? It makes more sense that you would try to think about a rope, because that's never going to happen either. But that's just a little thing. There's a lot of little things. You figure, I tell you who knows a lot about this stuff, who I've been one-to-one with, and that's Scott Nelson, the cryptolinguist. He also teaches comparative religions. He gets into why the disciples were named what they were named, where they came from, how Christ collected them systematically. And you go all the way into 326 AD, I think it was, when Constantine got the Nicene Creed going from these scholars, and he was trying to bring all the religions together because they were spread out everywhere. Well, what happens is they're all controlling, and he wanted to control the mass, because it was so he got one religion that was It was going to be the one religion for everybody. And there was only 4 books in it, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it wasn't until later on when they started putting these other books in, they started canonizing the Bible that we have today. But then you've got the Dead Sea Scrolls now. It's found in 1947, and there's all kinds of things.
And the Dog Comedy Library. Let's not forget the Dog Comedy Library.
You're just finding out all kinds of things. But these people that fall back on this scripture that says if you change any word in the Bible, well, my gosh, it was written over hundreds of years from different people. I don't know how they can say that and keep a straight face. But I might go to hell for that. You never know.
Well, I hope not.
No, that ain't going to happen. We're all one.
Go back to the tapes.
Yes. That's what I want to get back to.
Yeah, that's what everybody wants to hear, isn't it? What Bigfoot sounds like.
Yes, they do. Can you tell us about this first one, which would be the rapid fire, wouldn't it? The rapid fire.
Well, that's the thing that Al Berry fought with, because every time he tickets someone, they say, well, that's just somebody speeding up the tapes or playing them backwards or something. And they speak very, very, very fast, very rapid. And that's why it's called rapid fire, because they just spout off like that. And it's like their brain's going 90 miles an hour or something, and their mouth can keep up with it. But Scott Nelson, when he got a hold of them, he realized he's hearing something there. And the Navy says you slow them down. And he slowed them down sequence by sequence, and that's when he could decipher human phonemes in them. And get the morphine stream that was there, which is a group of words. And anyway, you'll hear the rapid fire when you hear that. They're just very, very fast, but it is language.
Okay. You want to play that rapid fire sequence, Grass?
I think I can. Okay.
Whoa.
There you are.
That just gives me goose flesh all over. Okay. Who recorded this? Was it Al that recorded it?
That was Al's recording right there. Yeah, Al Berry.
Okay.
And that was Warren Johnson. You heard a voice in the background say, that's not very nice. Well, that's when we started yelling out at him. Anyway,
they were getting progressively aggressive, it seemed like.
Well, that sounds very aggressive, and they were aggressive. There's some sounds on there that just curl your toes. And, we're all sitting in there with our pistols cocked, ready for these things to come in after us, but it didn't happen. And these two, I think there were 2 of them, and we've had a sound expert.
That's what it sounded like to me was 2.
Yeah. And it was a male and a female, according to the sound expert, which listened to these in 1998, I think it was. She listened to these and said that, and she's a very qualified, one of only 10 in California qualified to the credentials she has to court interpreter in several languages and perfect hearing. And anyway, she listened to them and gave me a report on it. And she said it was a male and a female. And just let all the male listeners out there hear this. The female got the upper hand. But they were arguing amongst themselves. The chest beating was a display, And that sounded like a chest beating. Again, we weren't seeing what was making the noise, but it was probably around 30 feet from the microphone that Al had set up behind the shelter.
Wow.
But to hear how rapid how rapid talk that is, and
wow.
Anyway, that's
you
what
have no clue what they might have been arguing about.
Maybe the food. I don't know.
The food. Yeah.
That's a guess because they were taking our food then.
Huh.
Of course, we didn't know
Maybe
that they
he
were.
was being a pig,
at the time, we thought it might be directed at us. We weren't sure. Again, this is all. We don't know what these things are. To this day, we don't know what they are. But somehow they seem to have something in them that says don't interfere with humans, but these things did interfere with us. They're not supposedly able to, or not supposed to, mess with our free will. And I think that's why you don't see more people having the interaction that we had. But again, there's a reason for why this happened to us up there, and it could be just so I'd be on the show with you tonight, and someone could hear it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I may never know, but I hope to know what this was all about. I didn't realize how, again, significant all this was. And I didn't even talk about it. None of us did because we were business people in California and we didn't want to be made fun of and all that stuff. So Al Berry kind of took the wand and ran with it with the different studies and trying to get it done.
But you were actually there for this recording.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was there for a lot of them. I had some recordings that were this good or better, a lot of them, and they burned up my house fire in 1976. And if I hadn't have sent a copy of one of them off on my second CD, I have me interacting with these creatures, and I had made a copy of that and sent it to Al Berry, and thankfully he had it because I lost every recording I made. I had the best equipment ever the money could buy, portable equipment, working off D batteries, and I had stereo microphones, one set up outside one side of the shelter and another microphone set up the other side of the shelter. And you could hear these things walking. You put a headset on, you could hear them walking around the shelter. And I had some really nice recordings. Everybody was recording. I mean, all the guys were taking recordings at recorders up there. And so we got hours of these things over the years. But we've only released pretty much what I've got on these CDs right now. We've copywritten those and that's all I usually play when I'm being interviewed like this or when I talk at conferences is the sounds that we've released. Just because basically you don't know what they're saying anyway. And if you knew all this meant that and that meant that, well then you could play more of them, but just a bunch of jibber jabber.
Well, they're very crystal clear. That's what amazes me about them. Is they're completely crystal clear. Really excellent. For the time, considering how old they are and for when they were recorded, they're extremely clear.
Well, it was made on a Sony. His tape recorder was a Sony cassette recorder, and he had a microphone, a stereo microphone, but it was a single microphone. Mine was actually separate microphones, but his stereo microphone was pinned up to a little sibling pine tree up above camp. It was wired in. Everything was hardwired in those days. And but his microphone was turned. The stereo wasn't side to side. I mean, even though it's made that way, he had the microphone vertical. So basically, everything came in real strong on one channel, and the other channel we didn't know that till we was in the studio producing these things, and that's when we were told that the stereo didn't come through because the mic was set the wrong way on the tree. But it didn't matter. I mean, it's still good recording. And,
well, can you tell us a little bit about the anguish sequence that we're fixing to play next?
Just play it and I'll tell you about it.
Okay.
Here we go.
What in the world is going on, Ron?
Your guess is as good as mine. I think the thing was constipated as well. I don't know.
Well, I was thinking that, or either they were having relations or something.
Well, there was only one of them, obviously, on that. So I really don't know. You know, it's just one of those nights when we were recording, and we put that out there because it sounded like he was.
He sounded just frustrated to me.
Well, you know, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was a jet flying over, and it's like you could just picture him not wanting that to happen or something, like there was something wrong. I don't really know what it was, but you could hear a jet in the background at that time, I think it was, going over, and Al seemed to speculate that he was just putting his fist up at the air. I don't know. We don't know. Interesting sound, though, and I've got a rhythmic sound, which
Definitely.
I did send that to you. But they have a rhythm. This thing was pounding, slapping on either a rock or slapping on its legs or something. But he was making a sound along with the rhythm that he was beating out, and it's just cool. I should have sent you that one. That's fun too. It's on my first CD that I put out with Al Berry's story. Jonathan Frakes, Star Trek. You know Jonathan Frakes, got #1 on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yes.
Yeah, he narrates that for us. I hired him to do it, and it's Al Berry wrote the story, and it's well done. They're both well done, and I get a lot of compliments on them. They're both each of them about 40 minutes long, and they have the sound interjected as we tell the story.
That's interesting. I've got to get it. That's just all there is to it.
Well, again, they're downloadable on my website, ronmorehead.com or bigfootsounds.com, either one.
Okay. And so what is the next sound? I have my list in front of me. Is it the samurai that's next?
No. Let's see. I think it's the whistle, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say whistle.
I closed it out on mine, so.
All right.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit?
Well, you'll hear a whistle. What we do know is the whistle they do is not through the lips; it's through the vocal cavity, and that was brought out in the study that Dr. Curlin did at the University of Wyoming. So you'll hear it's a really harmonic whistle. It has multiple harmonics in it. You'll hear also Warren Johnson whistling back, so you'll hear a human whistle in there too. And it's quite a difference, and it's all in a graph. Dr. Curlin wrote his report, presented to the Anthropology of the Unknown at the Vancouver Museum in 1978, and it came out in a book later produced by University of British Columbia. It's called Man-Like Monsters on Trial. And in that book is his report. And his report has graphs in it, and it shows the range of some of these sounds, how it goes in and out of the human range, and above and below and in our range. The whistles are definitely done by the vocal cavity, though, and not by the lips. And you'll hear that.
Okay. Here we go.
Wow.
No, I guess I gave you the short one. The long one had Warren Johnson whistling back, and it was making more. Anyway, that's the whistle, and I should have sent you the longer one, but
and so
that's a very pretty whistle.
And it comes out of the vocal cavity, which would be where, in the back of the throat?
Yeah.
Huh.
And I had one whistle like that. Well, we had one mouthing off up above our shelter one night, and Al Berry and Lewis Johnson and myself walked up there. It was a bright moonlit night, and it was behind these boulders. We know it was. We walked up behind the boulders, and it already left and went into the tree line. And we were standing there, and I yelled out, and this thing whistled back at me, and that's what the whistle sounded like.
Wow.
But that particular whistle was recorded by Al Berry at a different time. But again, their whistles are just very, very pretty, I think.
Play that again.
Yeah, that's the short version. I have a better version than that on. I apologize. I should have sent you the other one.
Oh,
but
that's
fine.
That's awesome.
What's
I've
the next
heard
one?
whistling here, but it's just a, and then another one will answer it. Just single whistles like that, and I know it is not a bird. We've got, I know my birds in this area, and it's only certain times of the year that I'll hear this, and that's when the blackberries are coming in. And it's like I've always assumed, or I would hear it when I would come outside. I'd hear one whistle when I'd step out the door. But it was just a single whistle. And I've got that recorded several times, but I never hear it any other time. It's just at night, and there are not really very many night birds here. We have the whippoorwill, the owl, but nothing that whistles like that. So I don't know.
Something I tell people when I have a whole article I've written on how to interact, or what I think, what it worked for me anyway. And one thing I suggest they listen for is the sound of silence. Because when these things would come into our camp, everything was silent, including our horses. I mean, they would just be frozen, and you wouldn't hear birds, you wouldn't hear anything going on. It's like every animal in the forest would just stop making any kind of a sound.
Right.
And so listen for the sound of silence. There's nothing else making noises.
Well, you've got an apex predator in the midst, and everything there knows it's something bigger and top of the
We got a
food
question
chain.
from the chat real quick. Winona Walksbar wants to know if Ron ever hears inflection. That sounds like a question. In other words, are they asking you a question?
Yes. And that's on, I think, the next sound you're going to hear. I think I think I said "talk to us" is the next one. I think that's what we were interacting with them that night, and I do believe one was asking me a question. I don't know if I have to play that next one, and we'll see if that's the one or not. But I had one, and I call it the Apollo question because it was Apollo, and I didn't know what it was saying, but I'd answer back and mimic it, and it would come back at me. And I think it was asking me something. And I know I play that sound in my presentation, which a week from this Saturday I'll be in Golden, Colorado, giving a presentation. If anybody's close to that that's listening, they might want to pick that up.
Yeah.
If they're not sold out already, you just contact me today, and they've just about sold all the tickets. But, it was going to be in Bailey, Colorado. That's where his museum is, but it's the Sasquatch Outpost, I think it's called, and they're having it at the Timber Lodge in Colorado, in Golden, Colorado. That's this on the 9th. But I play sounds in those conferences. But if you want to play that next one, I'll give you after I hear it, I'll tell you what it's about.
Which one is that? Talk to us?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Which one talk to us?
Wow.
I'm going to do that one.
Is that it?
I'm going to play it again, see what happens.
Yeah, I get some of those.
Which one talk to us?
Yeah, I guess I cut that one short too.
All right, everybody has to go to Golden to hear the whole thing, right?
That went for a long time that night. That's the night that Bill and I both got to see one. Got glimpses of them at different times that night. shooting through the trees. Because they really started interacting with us. This was 1974 when that took place. They started interacting with us while we were still outside the shelter, which was quite unusual. And the cryptolinguists, I asked him, I said, was that they sound so different than the aggressive sounds that we had in the early 70s? And I said, is it the same ones? He said, yes, the same vocal mechanism produced the sounds on both 71, 72 Alberry's tapes and these sounds. He says he thinks that they may have slowed their rapid chatter down to something we may have been able to understand. And, of course, I just stood up and started yelling back at them, and they started, and I got all this on tape. We got into camp. We was all tired. I unpacked the horses, and I was trying to fix dinner before it got too dark. And actually, the moon came up, and it wasn't dark at all, because you can see at 8,400 feet where the elevation where camp is, you can almost read a newspaper when there's a full moon. And these things started snapping limbs and clacking rocks and whooping, and it was an exciting night. And then they started making these sounds like this, and it was definitely calling out to me, and I was calling back to them during the night, and this went on for over an hour that night, and until we shine a light. Basically, you don't want to shine lights when these things are doing stuff. That gets rid of them quick.
Yes. That's definitely.
But in answer to that lady's question, yes, I think they were trying to ask me something that very night, and I don't know what it was. I've had people tell me, well, I know what they were saying, but everybody tells me something different, so you don't know who to believe.
There was another question, too, and I've got to try to find it. It was last hour.
Let's see. Well, Flycatch has another one. If you've ever contacted the Gorilla Foundation, I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Well, to find out what, in 2008, National Geographic had an article on inside animal minds, and it was about a bonobo, which they think that had in captivity. Cansey is his name. Had in captivity pretty much all his life. They think he was trying to speak English words because that's all he'd been around. And they said, but the rapid chatter was just too fast. They had to slow it down to see if they could make it. And I was going to contact them, but that's Scott Nelson. I'd asked him if he couldn't do it, but he never did it. But again, all of Ape Foundation can do, they don't have the vocal mechanism it takes to create a sapient language, a cognizant language. They can read signs, they can find hundreds of words by sign language, but they don't have the mechanism to talk like these things do.
Yeah.
So I found out enough to know that it's, well, plus there's no apes there, and it was Bigfoot. They had like big tracks, and so no, I never contacted the Great Ape Institute. I was going to let Scott do that, but he didn't see any reason to, because apes don't have the vocal mechanism it takes to make sounds like this.
Wow.
Well, Kenny wants to know if they ever communicated with clicking sounds in their vocals.
Yes. Didn't record that, but there was some clicking sounds went on. Never saw anything, but we was all in the shelter, three of us anyway, and we heard this clicking sound out by our stove, and it was like castanets, clicking sounds.
Yeah.
And it kept coming up closer to the shelter. First thing, it was outside the shelter, which we have a log door. We just close a log. It's a log that fits between two trees. It closes it up. And all of a sudden, the sound was inside the shelter without, it's come through the wall somehow. It was a clicking sound. And I write about this in my book because we never could find the source of that. We turn our lights on, nothing would be there, and it would stop immediately. And as soon as you turn your flashlights off, it would start up again. It was like it was clicking. It was clicking, whatever it was.
You don't think it was an insect?
What's that?
You don't think it was an insect?
An insect? No. No, it was loud, and it was up high, wasn't on the ground.
Huh.
It was kind of up high, actually. We was in our sleeping bags, and we shine our light up there, and nothing would be there, but it stops as soon as you turn your light on.
So you don't think it was rock clacking?
Rocks? Did you say rocks cracking?
Yes.
That was inside our shelter, and there was nothing there, but it was making that sound.
Okay. I'm just trying to find an answer to that. So
well, that's the thing. I got those stories like that, and I mean, where do you go with that? Where do you go with it? One time we saw a big controlled blue ball of light coming down towards the shelter, and it was outside, and Bill and I both saw it, and it just got lost behind the trees. We don't know, but it was huge, whatever it was, and that's all that happened. But it was a UFO of some type, and it was definitely controlled, and strange things. One time we heard a tuning fork sound, a big humming sound, like a big 500-pound hummingbird above your heads. And this was in the daytime, and you never could see where it's coming from. You hear the whoo, 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 like that, you know. And don't know. Never could find the source of that. But you got those little mysteries, and we just sort of let it go. And okay, well, Al Berry.
Put it on the shelf until you get a.
Yeah, Al Berry had a master's degree in science, and he says, you just don't want to talk about that stuff if you ever want to gain any credibility in this stuff. He was classical science, and I speak with Dr. Meldrum and these professors, and I've been all over the world, basically, in Siberia and in Nepal, and you can't convince someone who's been trained in classical science, because their discipline, it keeps them in a box. It keeps them with certain perimeters that they can go, and they can't go out of that. And they're good people, and I know they're inside of them. They want to go out, but they can't, because they believe these creatures exist, but they got to stay within their box, or they lose funding for this. They'll lose credibility for that in their field. Their peers won't respect them. And I know Dr. Curlin took a hit from the work he did for us in the 70s. It's just, I've talked to them on a personal level, and I know they believe in God. They believe in, Bigfoot, but they can't say that in their field when they talk. Anyway, it's interesting.
Let's do this last sound here.
We have two more sounds, don't we? Or is it just one?
Well, we got Samurai, and I think that's the last one.
Well, the Samurai, I got to tell you a little bit about that before you play it. That was coined by Matt Moneymaker, the guy on Finding Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And he come up before he started the BFRO, and he heard the sounds that I had, and he had heard about them. He come up when I lived in Port Townsend over here, and he heard that, and he said, "That sounds like a samurai." And that's who coined the sound, samurai sounds. And so now I hear people say, "Hey, I've heard samurai language, out in the field, but I couldn't record it, but I heard things just like that." And so that's where all this. I got to tell you another thing. One of the teachers back there where Scott Nelson teaches in Missouri is Japanese, and he heard the sounds, and he said, "That sounds just like some of the fling to it. The inflection sounds Oriental. It's got some Japanese twang to it, And I heard, I've got to tell you, I was down in the Yucatan, spent a lot of time down there at the Mayan ruins and all, and I was with a guide who spoke the Mayan language, and I heard him talk it, and when I heard it, it sounded just like some of the stuff I was hearing Bigfoot talk up there. So that was kind of interesting. Then I find out that they have the base of their spine, the Mayans had a birthmark, and they chased that down all the way to Mongolia. So they are from Mongolia. The Mayan culture is from Mongolia, and if through DNA, they've chased it all the way back to that. So that's interesting that it all comes from that area. Even the Gigantopithecus, that they found in Southeast Asia, supposedly, if it stood upright, was 10 or 12 foot tall, but they don't know, because they can't get DNA out of the remains they found. They don't know if it was cognizant or not. They don't know, just like a big upright ape. But that's where most scientists go with this. They go with that theory that these Bigfoots are a remnant of the Gigantopithecus that really didn't go extinct, that they somehow crossed over the land bridge and got here in this continent.
Yeah.
No, there's too many different types. You can't put it in one box.
No.
All right, let me play this and see what it does.
That's the samurai sound.
Wow. So it was two different individuals.
I don't know. That was the night that I was interacting with them, and I think that was the big male. And I think the male and the child, the adolescent, was down the other side of the camp. And he is the one I think I got a glimpse of shooting through the woods. But I think he was coming down on them for getting maybe a little bit too close to us, because they were pretty close that night.
I'm going to play it again.
That pretty much sounds like it's two different ones now that I'm looking back on it. I'm trying to remember that night. It's like the cry was coming from one direction, then that big beefy voice came in on it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to talk to Bill about that, see if we can remember. It's been a long time ago, and I talk about it so much, and I've never thought about that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's been over 40 years ago. I don't know, maybe
but
Bill's got
actually,
his recording.
I know you may not believe this or not, but I have actually recorded. I don't have it in my possession anymore. It's one of those things that got lost when a computer went down and hard drive. But I used to have a recording very similar to that.
Mm.
And, well, when I played it, people said, oh, that must be your TV or something like that. And I said, no, it was just that, where you hear the deeper voice.
Mm-hmm.
There were two. There was one that was doing the higher pitched whining kind of, and then the other one was it was almost, wow, it was real close. And, wow. I've actually never heard that recording, so this is pretty fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm. I got to say something before we run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
There's one set of tracks up there we followed till we couldn't follow them anymore, and they were 25 and a half inches long. The thing wasn't running. Had a 13-foot stride, and
good Lord,
you got to do the math on that.
Right.
But how does
a friend of mine up here got a 23-inch track just this side of Rainier.
How big was the stride? Does he know? He was able to track more than one.
They could only make out the one, and we were actually almost on our knees trying to get some kind of impression. It was right on a logging road that was pretty dry and hard packed. And
well, with that
big
a foot, the thing probably took a step and was a few yards away.
Yes, exactly. How tall would that be, Ron? I mean, doing the math.
Well, it had to be at least 12 foot, and I've heard other people say 12 foot, but we didn't used to talk about that because it just, people can believe an 8-foot Bigfoot, but they can't believe a 12-foot for some reason.
Right.
Although they're the same.
But here's my question. Some people say, well, they're here to help us. These things are so big. How does something so big stay so hidden for so long? And how does something that big?
That's a big question. Everyone keeps asking. Yeah. If they're really real, where do they hide? Yeah.
How can they hide? Really? I mean, there's more and more of these things out there, and people are seeing more and more. But my question again is, if they're here to help, why don't they help? and
right.
God knows we need it. But supposedly they can move interdimensionally, and they're able. They know things that we don't know, but they're not allowed to intervene. However, some of them do, and there's where my theory keeps going into philosophizing, and I get into a little bit of this in my book, what they're all about, and the last days and stuff like that. Because as it was in the days of Noah, so shall also be in the second coming. Well, giants were here, aliens were intermixing with the human women, and there's offering advanced technology for that. And they're going to come again, and they're going to offer us advanced technology. And we're going to accept it if you don't know what you need to know. Anyway, I got carried away.
Well, if you get down close to the end, I don't know how my computer lags, but how many minutes do you have, Grant?
I got 3.5.
Okay, that's what I have too. What would you like to tell us in the last 3.5 minutes, Ron? You've been wonderful.
Well, here's what I'll say.
Okay.
I think that I believe in evolution. I believe that the caveman was here, troglodyte, troglodytes, I guess they call them, and I believe that they were to a certain stage when God changed the DNA and made that man in His image, and that's who I think we're remnants of. Is that man made in the image of God, and we are very special people. We have a very special place in eternity, unlike what these creatures are, Bigfoot, as we know them. They're made in the image of something, but it's not the same as we are. They are sapient like we are, but they're not like we are. So my suggestion to people is when they're out there dealing with them, is keep your guard up because you don't know which ones you're dealing with. Don't be deceived. And in the last days, a lot of people will be deceived.
Yes.
There's a lot going on that you can't see interdimensionally. I think it's got something to do with the light and our vibrational waves. We are a vibration. Our energy is a vibration. Physics says that energy or information doesn't die, so it means we go somewhere. Something happens to us. We're just in a body that is being perceived by these senses that we have. That gets into a little bit of, but it's all physics. It is not philosophizing so much. Physics is something that I think everybody should look into. There are books that are simple to read, but it's hard to get your head around the fact that some of those things that the mathematics says is real. But, you don't see how a microwave works. That's a microwave. We're talking about the macro world here. When we're talking about Bigfoot, we're talking about the macro world that we can see and perceive with our eyes. We can't see how a cell phone works, but it's using physics. And there's just more and more being discovered every day in this field, and I encourage anybody to delve into it if they have an interest. And basically, have your guard up. Know what it's all about. Not that I do. I don't. There's an old saying that says, "When you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot." So I just want to stay green. I don't want to get ripe. I don't want to not learn. But some people have a closed mind, a very closed mind, and they won't go out to the ape camp. They still think it's an ape out there running around the woods, and that's why they're not having success. The people making money on those tree mount cameras are the people that make the tree mount cameras. And I shouldn't say that because I know the Olympic Project. Derek Randall's, and all those guys. They're really great people. I appreciate them. I just don't believe in trail cams because I think it's like somebody hanging up a picture.
That's why Derek isn't talking to me anymore either. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had an out and out about that about 3 years ago.
I don't argue. I just don't like to downgrade anybody or anything because we don't know what they have to respond to in their lifetime, and they don't know what we have to respond to. So that's why you're not supposed to judge other people, but let them make their own decisions on what they want to do. Just tell them what you think, and that's where it goes. But trail cams, and I've talked out there to the Olympic Project, and again, I think they were receptive to what I said. I'm sure they were, because they respect me, and they've known of me for a long time, and so there's not too many people that's been in this field as long as I have, and I've interviewed as many people as I have, and has dug into all this stuff all around the world like I have to come up with the connecting the dots like I'm trying to do in my
and we appreciate
hypothesis.
you doing that very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to spill it out.
And I thank you for coming on. You've been a fascinating guest. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate that. And our listeners have too. And we'd like to have you back someday when you've connected a few more dots.
There's a way to do that. Just ask me.
I will.
But my
Thank
book
you
will be
so
out
much
this
for coming
fall.
on.
My Quantum Bigfoot book will be out this fall. I hope to have it out by then.
Okay.
And it should be interesting.
I'm going to get both of them. Well, I think we better call it a night before we run out of tape here. So, everyone, say good night. And
Good night.
good night, everyone.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, and thank you.
Thank you, Ron.